Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Maria Gonçalves podcast. I'm your host, Maria Gonçalves, and today we have a special guest, Alison Pickering, all the way from LA. So, welcome, Alison.
Thank you so much, Maria. It's nice to be here. I appreciate the invitation.
I am so happy I got to meet another tarot lover, and that's why I invited you on my podcast. And if you could let us know, how did you get into tarot?
Well, it's been a while because I'm in my 60s now, if it's shocking to say. And back like 40 years ago, I had taken a trip and I had taken a trip. This was in Amsterdam actually. And I, someone had said, this was someone who we would have debates. We would have like spiritual debates. And I was very political. I was very, you have to prove it to me. And I was very intellectual and, scientific and all these kinds of things. And so we would have banter and debate. And he's like, you should also maybe go see my friend Ted. And so he set me up to have an appointment with someone who was a psychic reader. And that psychic reader used tarot as part of their process.
Yeah,
And that was pretty wild. It was the
yeah,
first time I'd ever had that kind of experience. And then that night, I was sitting like at the hotel and I was literally doing a crossword puzzle, and some voice came in my head and said, "What a hamster wheel thing to do with your fine brain." And I was like, "Oh, yeah, I guess so." And I then thought, well, what can I do? And I like knew maybe three yoga poses or something like that. So I did some yoga stretching poses or whatever. And then
yeah.
I laid myself out on the floor. And then honestly, it was another experience at that point. I had what I would describe as a very spiritual experience. It was rather kind of light blue, light green. It was, I don't know what. But after that time, that debate was no longer a debate. If I was going to take the position of maybe, maybe not, maybe that kind of thing, that would be a big fat lie because it had been completely like confirmed to me that there was something else going on. And so that was a big revelation, I suppose is a word, or it was a big
Yeah.
wake up to me. It was a big, um, it, I don't know if you ever like back in the day in the old train stations or in the old airport, they would have the thing, and when they would change the times, they
Yeah.
would update it, it would go brrrr, and the
Yes,
whole thing
yes.
would change. So I felt like that experience had caused my whole life to have to go get like reevaluated all the way down. And I had to like relook at everything in the light of that new experience and kind of rethink
Yeah.
everything. And that was a good experience. That's always a productive experience.
Oh,
So it was
wait,
kind of, yeah,
can I ask,
of
was it
course.
because of the reading?
Well, the reading itself was the same day of the night of that experience. And so I can't, so correlation is not causation, but perhaps my brain was opened or my heart was opened, but I was
Yeah.
open enough to hear that voice inside me. And I suppose obedient enough to like go, okay, let me go like,
Yeah.
meditate. Because I didn't very often meditate, but I know what meditation is, and I could actually accomplish it
Yeah.
if I was disciplined. And so that experience really like confirmed something else to me. So when I came back to town, I had told my mom that I was kind of interested in spiritual things, and what she did is she was such a sweetheart. She had antiques, and so she got me an antique tarot deck, which is the Visconti Sforza one from the 1400s, which is it's a big deck that was in their collection
Yeah.
as a rich family. And then she also got me a beautiful crystal ball, which I never really have practiced scrying in
Yeah.
the crystal ball, but I have it. Actually, I packed it. It's in the things that I packed up to take away because it's very sentimental value. We still have our stuff packed in case a fire would come. They had a big drill to say, so we still have stuff kind of in suitcases ready to go, and I have my like most precious artifacts in a suitcase ready to go, and that's in there is that
Yeah.
crystal ball and that deck, in fact, from my
Yeah.
mother. And so then I started kind of learning the deck. I got a sauce deck after that, a Crowley sauce deck, and a wonderful book by Angeles Arrien, which was
Wow.
called the Sauce Workbook. And that it was like way above my head, but I was doing the
Yeah.
workbook. Um, and
If
then
I could
I,
just add,
please, of course.
um, for people that are tuning into the podcast, when you hear this, in the future and you just heard Allison about the packing is because there are the fires in
That's
LA.
right.
So, she has been gracious. She is safe because I would never do this podcast to endanger her life. And, she's in a safe zone in case you guys are wondering, and you've heard that because we do have, beautiful people and subscribers out in LA listening. So I want you guys to know that Allison is safe.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you so much. I appreciate that. And to all of my friends and colleagues and people in LA who have been affected by this, and anyone who's been affected. Canada had big fires, big disasters, floods, and things that come through.
Yeah.
And it's just, you just have to respond. And poor people have gone through a lot. And Maria, you were just telling me that your family is not unfamiliar with losing a home in a fire since there have been terrible fires in Portugal in the past.
Yeah.
And so it's just
And now I
it's
get teary-eyed. So all
yeah,
our thoughts and our love and, sending all that healing out to everybody and hoping everybody
absolutely.
is safe at this time out
Absolutely.
out in LA
Absolutely.
today. Yes.
Indeed. So thank you
Yeah.
for reminding us of the preciousness of life. And that was something that was very precious to me is those mementos from my mother.
Yeah.
Oh, now I'm getting teary too. So those mementos from my mother, plus some other things that are, and it was a weird process. Just to
Yeah.
continue a little bit with this aside, when you get, because they sent out a thing to the
Yeah.
entire LA County. They sent a thing to 25 million people and said,
Yeah.
get ready to evacuate. And so we all were forced to like figure something out. And so you're forced at that point to like go choose what are you going to take with you if you need to take it with you. And your mind is so weird at that point. And then to look at what it is that you chose, because I'm staring at it now because we're not in danger, but I haven't like unpacked it. And so
Yeah.
I'm looking like, why that? Why those things? Why those things? You start really looking at what's important to you and things like that. So those things were important to me, those gifts from my mother that first got me involved in kind of spiritual stuff. And so
Yeah.
I kept kind of studying. And then, let's say 10 years later or so, my father passed away. And I had some time off work. And this is when America Online was like by the minute. You would have to, I don't know if it was also in Canada, the same thing, but this is back in the 90s. And you
Yeah.
would pay by the minute to have dial-up connection. And it wasn't pictures, it was just like a little dialogue, but it's like texting. What texting is now was like the entirety of chat rooms and the internet back then,
Yes.
So I like being at home, and so I stayed at home and I was processing what had happened with my father and I was into this thing and I had massive bills from America Online. I would get online and I would be like, I'm offering a tarot reading,
Yeah.
serious only. Takes about 45 minutes, let's go in a chat room. And somebody would say, okay. And then we would go into that chat room and I would say, give me a number to represent yourself. And then I would count out that card.
Yeah.
Give me a number to represent, blah, blah, blah. And we would do like 5 cards. And then I would just start typing based
Yeah.
on whatever, because they weren't anything. I didn't know who they were. I didn't know where they were. They were some moniker. They were just a little, they weren't even emojis back then.
Back in the
And then
day.
so I'd be typing and then I'd, send a little something and they'd be like, oh my God, how do you know that? And then blah, 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 blah. Those are my exact words. Blah, 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 blah. Oh my
Yeah.
God, and that was fairly consistent. And so I started to trust the impressions that I was getting, which come largely through kind of explaining with language. Some is imagey, but it's really about trying to give voice to the image as I'm looking at in describing those circumstances. That's how I kind of get at whatever is particular for the person. To the degree that I do, which I have to say, sometimes you project yourself into a reading, sometimes you're picking up on their worries. There's different.
Yeah.
I didn't realize how psychic or empathic I have been lifelong until more recently. And so my life has been very confused with other people's feelings and my feelings, and it's been hard to kind of tease apart what's what um, until I
I
really
was
recognized that. Yeah.
Yeah, I was actually gonna ask you that. Did you notice how psychic you were as a kid?
I probably thought everybody was that way. I was
Really?
an only child.
Yeah.
I was some weird kid. I might be on the spectrum in some way because I'm a little weird. I don't know.
I think we're all weird.
I think we all are, we all are. And
Like good
especially if,
weird.
yeah, yeah. But I don't know how typical or atypical we are because the people are very polar, but it is a spectrum and it's not only a linear spectrum, it's a big, large spherical
Yeah.
spectrum, shall we say, so somewhere
Yeah.
in there do we find ourselves. And so as a kid, I I spent a lot of time alone. My mother worked nights and she slept a lot during the day. We lived in a big canyon where I could just kind of walk around and there were other kids around there and there were neighbors. And so it was a relatively free childhood. This was in the 1960s in Laurel Canyon. So like Joni Mitchell's album, Ladies of the Canyon, was that period of time. That's when
Yeah.
I was like a 6-year-old, 7-year-old, something like that, growing up in the canyon. Um, so it was a very hippie kind of time, and that was normal for me. And my mom was a single mother in that period of time, and she was had her interesting life, and it was an interesting life around then, And was I psychic? How did I realize it? Um, I think I was just sensitive.
Yeah.
I think I just figured that's what everybody, I didn't really have any basis for comparison. I didn't have siblings or anything to compare my experiences with. And so I just kind of perceived the world and it was fairly solitary most of the time. And
Yeah.
so it's hard to say. Um, I don't think I knew how to tell the difference.
That's all right. I'm always curious because uh everybody has different experiences. So it's always cool to listen to people's experiences. Like for myself, I knew as a kid there was just a knowing. I
Okay.
just knew stuff. But I didn't realize that until years later when I start talking to other friends and they're like, "Oh, I was born psychic or I was born a medium." And I'd be like, "Really? I don't think I was." And then I start looking back and I'm like, "Oh, maybe I was, but I never called it that. I
Mhm.
never thought of those moments as that." So I'm always curious how the experiences are for you. So now I am curious because I just curious. With your mom, was she psychic too? Did she just
No,
have that knowing?
no, I don't think so. She was very pragmatic, my mother was very sensitive, but
Yeah,
she was very generous, she was very emotional. I I don't think that she was psychic, but I do remember some instances, for example, where not with her, but for example, with myself, like for example, I had a dream about my grandfather, and I told my mother about this dream, and she just went very pale because I had never seen my grandfather. For example, I said, "Okay, bye. I saw Papa in a dream, and he was getting ready to go hiking in Angeles Forest, and he was wearing lederhosen and he was doing like chest expansion exercises and deep knee bends." And she was like, "Oh." He always complained that he couldn't go hiking, that he never had time for himself or to be outdoors, and he would do those exercises every morning of her childhood. She would see him do those things because he had a
yeah,
physically labor job. And so, but I had never seen any of that with my grandfather, and she was like, "Oh my gosh." So just little things like that. She had an experience of her mother after her mother passed away, of kind of the mother sitting on the side of the bed. And when my stepfather passed away, she described some experiences of having them kind of having him just put his head in the door and say, "Hey, how you doing?" And which was very real for her. And so I don't know if those would qualify per se, but those were some
yeah.
things that I'm aware of.
Oh my goodness, that's beautiful. I call those visitations from spirit. And they
Indeed, yeah.
right? When they come to visit us and be like, "I'm okay, I'm watching over you."
Hmm.
And that's like super, super precious. So I'm curious because you have a tarot academy, correct?
We're starting it up. So
Yes.
I have been involved in a tarot study group since we started with COVID in a kind of small circle. And it's been such a wonderful experience to really get into the imagery and to
Yeah.
form friendships and to support each other and to have, and if you're into this kind of thing, sometimes within your immediate circle, you won't have that many people who are that into it also, who want to geek out on it and things like that. So we're starting in the spring and we're going to be having monthly modules with weekly opportunities opportunities to have live classes and live Q&A, and we want to
Yeah.
have a nice founding group of people to explore this wonderful medium, uh, which is cool because you can, as you practice with it, as you play with it, because you have to learn it and play as part of the learning, and the
Yeah.
phenomenon of how tarot works synchronistically is so fascinating. That's the enough of a frisson, it's enough of
Yeah.
a nice spark, a nice chill, or a thrill for us to keep at it. But the real power of tarot is the internal journey, and that's the connection
Yeah.
to your own personal, internal spiritual path, the realization of your own larger, higher self, and it's coming forward, not constrained so much by the limitations of our intellect and of our ego and of our needs and fears and limiting beliefs and all this stuff that
Yeah.
keeps us from, being the flowing fountains that we should be. So we're
It's
looking
true.
forward to having a nice core group of people to work with. And
Yes.
as we work with a core group of people, we will be creating a wonderful series of modules and lessons to then share with other people who might also like to partake of it. And we might do it together in the live context, or other people might partake of it after the fact in recorded context. But we're going
Yeah.
to be creating kind of an esoteric resource for people who are interested in tarot, as tarot for fun and entertainment, and also tarot for spiritual reflection, and also for conversation. And then
Yeah.
we want to do some events and some meetups live, some meetups
Yeah.
online, and then also some travel stuff, because I want to do a tour to the tarot origins in northern Italy and in the south of France. There's a
Oh,
beautiful
wow.
tarot garden by Nikki de Saint-Phile that's down between Florence and Rome.
Have you
There are
gone
go
there?
I have gone there. It's spectacular, and it's
Oh, I've
pretty
never heard of
amazing.
it. I'm
It's
sorry.
fabulous. Oh no, not at all.
Oh,
She was. Are you familiar with the Pompidou Museum in Paris?
no.
Has a big, so it's a big modern art museum, and it has a
Yeah.
big fountain in the front, and it has these weird, very mosaicy,
Oh, I
wild,
think I've seen that.
bosomy
Yes.
women that she calls the nanas. And so her
Yeah.
thing are these nana figures. And so these nana figures are kind of the fool flowing through her tarot garden that she built. And so there are these life-size, mosaic,
Wow.
gorgeous buildings and sculptures and installations. And it's all the 22 major arcana depicted in these various structures there, and it's pretty amazing. She lived in it for a
Wow.
while. At a certain point, it was a little overly powerful to live there, so she had to exit for a while. She also was in contact with Rachel Pollack, who's a
Okay.
very renowned and respected tarot scholar who passed away last year. And she and Rachel Pollack were in contact, and through her counsel, Rachel Pollack developed her wonderful tarot book, which is called the Shining Woman Tarot, that later became the Shining Tribe Tarot, which has
Yeah.
a whole kind of Jewish folk tale plus Aboriginal kind of artistic thread through it. And that's a
Yeah.
deck that I would like to learn. I haven't learned it yet.
Oh, wow. That sounds amazing. I know once you start going into tarot, you're almost going down the rabbit hole because
Oh, there's
every
so
deck is
much.
different.
Well,
I
it's
think
interesting. We've had this thing. So sorry to cut you off. I'm surrounded by so many crazy decks because they're all just beautiful works of art. They're like coffee table
yeah.
books, and they're so gorgeous. But it's kind of all I really need is the Waite Smith, the Rider Waite Smith deck.
Yeah.
The Mac Daddy deck really has quite a lot and enough to kind of live with forever and ever. The
Yeah.
Toss deck has its purposes. The Marseille has its kind of origins, but the Rider Waite Smith is really the one that most people kind of clone from and take their inspiration from. But every deck is gorgeous. This is a gorgeous deck. The Tarot of Oneness is a really nice, sorry, the focus.
Okay.
Tarot of
It was a
Oneness
little
is,
bit
yeah,
blurry.
yeah, yeah. And there's all kinds of great decks out there, and Oracle decks as well. And Oracle decks are lots of fun because then people can have free reign with the messaging. It's not so much according to the structures as tarot is.
Yeah. I am a tarot girl. I will say that. I have I have a lot of oracle, but I have way more tarot.
Do you have favorite
I just
decks?
I love Circo Marchetti from the
Yes.
US.
Uh-huh.
His decks, they take you to another place. The artwork is breathtaking.
It's funny. I have a Ciro Marchetti. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's like that, right? Are we saying it
Yes,
correctly? I don't know.
I hope so, but we respect him and he's very
I
prolific.
love his decks.
But for me, they don't land as much, and
Yeah,
so I have other decks artists that I kind of prefer, but I have given people his desks and they have been like, oh my God, they're over the moon
yeah,
because they really respond as well. So everybody
yeah.
has their kind of things. My friend loves kind of Baroque, very fancy things, and she really responded to the Golden Tarot, which was one of those first kind of collage
Oh, I
tarot
have
that
that.
used a lot of kind of Gothic art, and it's very
Yeah.
beautiful.
There's a lot, and then I have the Light Seers deck by
That's a
Chris Ann.
beautiful deck. Chris Ann is great, and she does the
Yeah.
Muse Tarot that's fantastic. So the
Yes.
Lightseers and the Muse Tarot by Chris Ann, both of them fantastic. We love Chris Ann. She
I
really,
love yeah. The reason I like Chris Ann, and I know a lot of my students like Chris Ann, is because it is a modern day version. It's
yes.
relatable into
Hmm.
today's like the artwork. It's relatable. It's
It
relatable to
is.
every day. We're not in kings and queens, crowns and gowns. We're just
I'm
regular
I'm
people
nodding.
in her
I
deck. I
can't
love
I
it.
can't I can't find them because I packed them.
That's okay. And then I just ordered her Chris Ann has a book. It's such a beautiful book for the late years deck, and,
Oh.
it's like the behind the scenes of, her thought process as she created her own tarot deck.
Oh, thank you so much
It's
for telling
so
me about that. I will get that book because I really respect her as a tarot artist, and I think that
yeah,
both of those decks are super evocative. And on my Facebook group, we'll put up multiple images of the same card, for example, and it's wonderful always to include hers
yeah,
in the mix because they have such a wonderful take on that on the experience. So you point out something really important, Maria, and that is that some artists they have their own interpretation of the tarot, but they really stay true to a lot of the deeper meanings of the tarot and a lot of the ways that tarot really touches into psychological elements and at a
yeah,
very deep level. And Chris Ann really achieves that very, very well. And there are other decks that might be more art decks,
yeah,
and so they have the artistic elements that are conforming to that artist's vision or to that particular era,
yeah.
or that like they're thematic decks, and so they work for the theme, but they don't necessarily have the deeper meanings. They're more the surface meanings. They match the surface meanings, but not so much the deeper meanings sometimes. And so when you
And they're
find
fun
somebody,
decks.
and there's fun decks like gummy bear decks or crazy decks, and you know it's a really good one that I like. Did I
Which
pack
one?
that one? The Deviant Moon. That's an example of
Ooh.
a weird deck that's super responsive. And I wonder if I packed it. I
Is
packed the
that
ones that mean a
tarot?
lot to me. It's tarot. Yeah, hang on.
Oh,
Yeah, this one.
yeah.
This one is really interesting. It has some kind of there, it's really depresso. It's very kind of depressive, but it's a really
Interesting.
interesting deck, and a lot of the psychology comes through very well with this one. But it's rather bleak. It's kind of bleak. In but in
That's so
that way,
interesting.
it really responds to the feelings.
You know what? I have because I like to collect the Disney, I think they're Disney, like Alice in Wonderland tarot deck,
Oh, I've
the
seen those.
Nightmare, the Nightmare Before Christmas tarot
I haven't
deck.
seen that one.
That's such a fun, deck.
Is
The
that Tim
Hocus
Burton?
Pocus. Yes.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah, and
I don't remember, sorry. I don't remember, but I like to collect these Disney decks. I have the one oh, what was it? The one where it was a TV show and she had, like, dragons. It was like a big TV series, and
is
now
that like
Game of
Game of
Thrones.
Thrones? Oh, yeah, how
Yes,
wonderful.
I
Great.
got that for Christmas. I was like,
Yeah.
"Yes," because my friends know I collect decks, so and then I've had, like, friends in other parts of the world because there are certain decks that don't ship to Canada, and they'll just ship it, and I'll open the mail and be like, "Yay,
Yay.
I got a
Exactly.
deck
How
from a different
fun.
country."
How
Yes, it's so much
fun.
fun. It is
My
so much fun.
co-host, we do a tarot talk show, and my co-host is this adorable man. He's such a dear friend, and he lives in Stockholm. And
Yeah.
so I went to visit him. We had a chance to finally meet in person. We had only met online for all this time. And so I had a chance to go over there. And he gave me a little wish list for this bookstore from California, which thank God survived. And it's called the Philosophical Research Society, which is where Manly Hall, I don't know if that name means anything to you, but he
Yeah.
was a guy in the 20s in California, and he was a real spiritual scholar, and he pulled together a huge library. And it's been alive all these years, and it's very vibrant now. And so I went to the bookstore and I dropped a lot of money to bring him a giant suitcase full of all kinds of
Yeah.
stuff that it's hard for him to get over there. And so that was very gratifying to, it was like Christmas for him to see all the lovely decks and books and stuff like that that we were able to
Yeah.
share over there. So that's always fun. And so it sounds like your friends take good care of you.
They do. And I've gone, like, on vacation, and if I find a tarot deck, I buy 2 because my
Yeah.
friend knows I'm coming back with one for her. I go, "I have
Beautiful.
2 because we don't have them in Canada, and I know and it'll be, like, local artists."
Exactly.
You
I
know what I
so
mean?
regret I
Yeah.
left a stack of like 3 or 4 decks behind in a country I visited that I probably won't be back at too soon. And I'm so sorry that I didn't bring them because they were like Brazilian decks from Brazil, right there. And
Very
but they were
wow.
heavy and big, and we already had so much suitcases.
Yeah. So now I'm curious, have you ever received a tarot reading that was unusual, that wasn't traditional? Or have they always been traditional for you?
Oh, I'm very non-traditional. So yeah, I read for myself very kind of conversationally. I'll just kind of spread out the
Yeah,
cards and talk to them, and other people will do that for me also. So it's certainly possible to use a particular spread, but it's also possible to just be very improvisational or spontaneous. If someone, for example, if I'm working with someone who's very new and
yeah,
they're very hesitant about it, then we might just use it as a coaching session, and I'll give them some post-its and say, okay, what do you want to ask some questions about? Okay, I want to ask some questions about,
yeah,
what's going on here. And so we'll write it down on the post-it and we'll stick it on the table. And then we'll write, and so and so we'll draw for those meanings.
yeah,
So that's not a traditional thing, but it's
yeah.
responsive to the needs. So
But for you, because 'cause I'm
reading.
assuming you've received readings.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Have
Yeah.
any of them stuck out to you? Or have they
Well,
all
certainly that first one was like,
yeah,
and it wasn't, I don't recall that being a particular spread, although I probably wouldn't have known one way or the other at that point, or what his style was.
yeah,
Um, Yeah, because I've been involved in this group on a regular basis since, let's say, just since COVID. So since 2020, it's been
a
now
few years,
four
yeah,
and a half years, 4.5 years that
yeah,
we've met like once, twice, sometimes 3 times a week, and
yeah,
we've studied things together, and we've unpacked decks together, and we've done so. Um, our interface that we use to share can be the traditional reading, but I've had lots of readings with people that they'll pull extra cards or whatever, and it's just
yeah,
or they don't pull it according to any particular thing. We're just having a conversation and seeing what pops up, that kind of thing.
yeah.
Um,
The reason I asked, like, when
yeah,
I
yeah.
went
It sounds
to
like you have an objective.
oh, no, no. When I'm always asking because I'm always curious because it sounds like you travel, so I'm always curious,
Oh, I
about
haven't done
reading.
too many. Yeah, I did get
Yeah,
a reading one time in Barcelona, and that
yeah,
was interesting. But I asked a question that I really wanted an answer from the cards, and she answered me from her own self. And it was a big question. And
yeah,
it was a real identity kind of question. And it
yeah,
probably wasn't the right kind of question. It was maybe like a yes or no kind of question that maybe isn't right to ask the cards, but it wasn't correct for her to answer it, in my opinion, from
okay,
herself. I was asking
yeah,
the question of the cards, and she was telling me her opinions. And so so I'm like,
that's different.
yeah, exactly. And so I had to kind of get out of gear and say, okay, well, I have to take that from her, not as like the cards.
Yeah,
And then she didn't really pursue it anymore, so neither did I.
yeah,
So that was okay.
yeah,
I have gone to readers who I thought were less than happening.
yeah. I had
And,
a
you
reading
know,
when I was in Portugal, and she was trained Brazilian way to learn Gypsy tarot.
oh, I'm not
I
familiar with that.
it was wild. That's why I asked. Because when I got to Portugal and they're like, "Oh, somebody does tarot reading." I was like, "There's somebody I wanna know how they do it around
Yeah.
here."
Mhm.
But there was coins, we had to pay coins, like, I guess they're plastic coins, but we had to pay passage to the spirit world.
Okay.
There was a whole ritual. The gypsy cards came out, she's like, that these are I can't even remember because this is like 10 years ago, so
Mhm.
but I just thought, "Oh, that's so cool." That's why I asked you because you sound like you're a world traveler, so I thought, "Oh, is there any unique way?" Because not everybody does like the Celtic cross or the traditional reading, so that was the only thing to my question. I was just
Oh,
curious.
totally. And I would, it's now piqued my curiosity more because I do have kind of my trusted people that I go to. And so if I'm
Yeah,
traveling somewhere, it's like I got no recommendations. There's no
yeah,
word of mouth. There's just like a neon sign or something. And so
yeah,
and then often I'm not traveling alone, and so there's somebody else's time to take into consideration. So, but now you've made me want to do it some more, Maria. So I will, because that one from Barcelona was a long time ago. That's probably when I
yeah,
was, yeah, maybe that was in the 90s, maybe after that. No, it was sometime in the 2000s, but
yeah.
definitely a long time ago. Yeah.
I think they're fun. I think too, like you said, there are exceptional tarot readers out there. And then there are some that are not so good because I've had the not so good readings. And then for those of you that are listening, uh, my thing for you guys is if it doesn't feel right, don't take it. Don't, because sometimes there are tarot readers out there that are not so good and try to kind of like what you said, you realize it's their opinion and it's no longer intuition, it's no longer coming from spirit. And yeah, so if a tarot reading doesn't feel good, empower yourselves, let it go. Because
Yeah,
I
and
think
listen
that's
and
important.
listen to the language that that person is using. If they're using
Yeah.
language that is planting seeds of doubt or that is giving you reason to like fear or think that something's happening behind the scenes, if they're invoking fear in you, I think that that's always a real red flag and a half
Yes.
because um, I believe that it's the professional responsibility of any reader, any psychic reader, and any tarot reader to be extremely respectful of the vulnerability of their clients and only plant seeds of language that are going to be helpful for the person and
Yeah.
that are going to be actionable for the person. And they're going to allow them to think resourcefully about the situation, to not
Yeah.
give them something that's going to enable them to kind of spiral in such a way that people can do when they take in information that's concerning. And that doesn't mean like I'm filtering information. That means that any information can be seen in a resourceful way. Any situation can be seen in a resourceful way and should be when you're the one communicating it to somebody else. And so
Yeah.
I use that word resourceful. It's a very NLP word because neuro-linguistic programming is a good adjunct skill
Yeah.
in that it's a duty to be careful and to stay in the truth with your language and not to plant things that can create potentially limiting beliefs in someone. And that's so it's a big responsibility when we're reading
Oh,
for people
absolutely.
to keep things in a place of action and power and possibility for them.
Oh, absolutely. I always tell my students, you leave people better than you found them because
Yes,
they're coming
indeed.
to you super vulnerable. They're scared, they're confused, and they're trusting you and to uphold the ethics and not put the fear to leave them empowered. So now I am curious, do you have a favorite tarot card?
Oh, well, the card that has always popped for me over the years has definitely been the Queen of Wands. The Queen of Wands, I used
Yeah.
to even have a black cat. I had a black cat for like 20 years until she finally gave up the ghost, as they say, poor baby. And it's just been a card that has always come up. For me, I've got a friend, it's always the Seven of Pentacles for them. Got
Yeah.
another friend, for him, it's always the Hermit.
Yeah.
So it's just it's very interesting how people and that's when I pull for him as well as when he pulls for himself. It's the hermit. They say, and so it's a shared experience that these cards kind of show up for people. What's your
Yeah.
card? Do you have one?
Yeah, it's the death card.
Oh, really?
And then the
Interesting.
death card is actually coincides
Such a
with my
transformational card.
birthday card.
Oh, wow.
Frozen transformation.
Yeah.
I used
So
to
you
get
are a
a
born
lot of
psychic then. You are a born psychic.
it's almost that death card. I used to get a lot of the tower card, and I'm like, "Oh, I just need a break." But you know what's interesting? I found because I see clairvoyantly, so
Uh-huh.
I would see, like, when things are coming up for me, when change is coming. I don't have a deck, but all of a sudden, spirit's like, I'll see the image of the card in front of me, the tower card, so I know change is happening. But
Okay.
now what I find interesting is, spirit's not using that anymore, my spirit team. So now I just feel that energetic shift in my body. Suddenly I was like, "Ooh, I felt that." And I'm like,
Wow.
I know change is coming. So for you, if you don't have tarot cards in front of you and you're going about your day, how does your spirit team connect with you? Is it a feeling? Is it a thought?
No, it's kinda like a running conversation. It's, the idea that there's an internal conversation and there's, like, something you realize. There's something
Mm,
that you feel. But I will say that perhaps I'm not as psychic or I'm not as clairvoyant because it really is more of a it's more having to do with verbal expression. So if it's when I'm talking, then I might get an idea and then I'll say that thing. The cards are
mhm,
very helpful to then prompt that. And so I guess when I get into the mode with the cards, it's a good
yeah,
medium for me to access that. But I maybe the channel is not as clear for me without them.
yeah.
I have not really tried yet, you're inspiring me, to perhaps do a reading where I just see what would be the appropriate card if that were perhaps the way to get that message. But the my readings tend to be fairly detailed, and
Yeah.
so in that way, I like the support of the cards to be able to get that specificity.
Yeah. You know what? I have enjoyed our conversation today. It's
Likewise,
been
thank you.
fun. I love having you on. I do want to let people know that I think it was last week you had a tarot party where
Yes,
you invite people in and then you have the cards and you go very detailed into like the symbolism of the cards and the meaning of the cards. Like it was quite fascinating to watch. So if people can they still join that? Like how
sure.
do they join that?
We have a couple that are coming up
Okay.
in, let me just tell you right now, we've got February 8 is coming up, and we do the first Friday, the second Saturday, and the third Thursdays, but that Friday and Saturday happen to coincide in
Yeah.
February. So there's one that's going to be like totally in the middle of the night. You probably don't want that one. So the second Saturday, so February 8th is going to be from 1 to 3 o'clock Toronto time. So 1 to 3 o'clock
Okay.
Eastern is going to be Saturday, February 8th, and I will drop into the Zoom right now for you that information, and you're welcome to share it. And everybody's welcome to come
Okay.
on over to the tarot party. And then I have another one on the 26th, which is a Sunday.
So when this airs, they may miss that.
Yes.
So will they are they every month that you have them? Or
After the February date, we're going to take a quick hiatus because I am going to
okay.
be doing some traveling, and then we're going to be starting the academy. So I haven't yet set the schedule of what the free events, the party events are going to be. But
Okay.
of the time frames, I don't know, does this time frame seem like a good one for your people? This Saturdays at 1 to 3 p.m.? That's like in the middle of everybody's weekend. So I don't know about all that. Um,
We'll
so
let them
I
decide.
wish I had more info. They're welcome to come. And then if you go to AlisonPickering.com,
Okay.
then that's where you can find out what's happening in my little world. And so that's just AlisonPickering.com, Pickering, Ontario, and Allison with one L. So
Beautiful. I was just about to ask you that for your
yeah,
website. So thank you so
I don't know.
much
Yes.
for sharing that. So people just go to her website if you're interested, contact her,
Yeah.
find out about what's going on. I want to say thank you so much for spending this time with us.
Thank you for
Stay
having me.
safe in LA. Everybody stay safe. And yeah, I look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you
All
so
right.
much for this opportunity, Maria. It's been wonderful talking with you. And thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.